You're watching Public Affairs. Berkowitz is my name. Politics is our game. And we will be doing lots of politics and public policy this evening because we have as our guest Dennis Gragert. He is publisher of dailywhale.com, right? And what we do here, folks, in case you haven't been watching the first 900 shows that we've done, and we should say we're taping this on March 2nd, 18 days before the Illinois primary. We do law, we do economics, we do politics, we do public policy, and we do TV. So we take that law, we take economics, politics, public policy, TV, and we smush it all together, and out comes things like, you're wondering, this may show, we're not sure, it may air a day before the March 20 election, it may air a day or two after, it'll still be just as relevant either way. So you may wonder who will win the Democratic primary for governor. Dennis Gragert, who will win the Democratic primary for governor.
Ooh, right off the bat, prediction questions. I always say that when I predict, you know it's going to be wrong. But I think J.B. Pritzker. I think he's going to be the victor in this.
Why? He's running against Chris Kennedy, who's got the famous Camelot name. His father was RFK Jr., who was assassinated in 1968. I think Chris was, what was he, like around 5 years old, I believe, around that time. He ran the Merchandise Mart, which was sort of the Kennedy fortune. He's left that. He, I think, has an MBA from Northwestern. And he's sort of running the Kennedy, I don't know, the Kennedy business or whatever. He keeps up on public policy. He was at the University of Illinois Board of Trustees. Was he chairman?
I believe he was.
Sounds pretty good to me. You think JB beats Chris Kennedy?
I do. I think JB has used his personal wealth and spent it well to present himself to the Democratic voters in the state, and that's been a hard hill to overcome for the other candidates.
The money, the $56 million or so that he spent so far.
Yeah.
$56 million, right?
Right. I think that's the number.
Yeah. Okay. So that
171,000 a day, I believe.
Without $56 million or something like that, you're saying JB wouldn't have won this. We're taping this on the 2nd. We're projecting it's right near the election.
Or
you're saying he'll win.
Or it would have been a closer race. I mean, I think JB's appeal is beyond what he's spent, but I think that's been.
What does he win by approximately?
That's even deeper into predictions.
10 points, 5, 15. Just give me one of those.
I think it's probably less than 10.
Less than 10. More than 5?
Somewhere in that.
Somewhere in the 5 to 10.
Yeah, 5
and who comes in number 2?
Ooh, there is. That's probably the hardest pick right now.
Just go with your gut.
Give me a name. Gut. I'm going to say Biss.
Daniel Biss, state senator from Evanston.
Right.
And how close is it? Who's number 3? The number 3 guy would be Chris Kennedy.
Chris Kennedy.
Okay, those are the 3 major candidates.
That's probably the biggest unknown is who comes in second.
Okay, so let's say Biss comes in second. You've just said that. He loses by 5 to 10 points to Pritzker. How much does he beat Kennedy by, in your view?
Maybe a percentage point or two.
They're pretty close.
I think they're very close. I think they will be very close.
Are there any really issues that are major that differentiate Pritzker from Kennedy from Biss?
You know, there are small issues, and candidates have tried to turn those into big issues, but for the most part, no, they really
What
are
is
coming
the
up
biggest issue to differentiate these 3 in your mind?
Well, both Daniel Biss and Chris Kennedy have, we saw this in last night's debate, have attacked J.B. Pritzker for his connections to Speaker Madigan. And that probably is the most significant one, but I don't think it's enough that's going to bring one of those candidates to beat J.B.
Attacked J.B. for what?
For his connections to Mike Madigan, his unwillingness to criticize the Speaker, distance himself from the Speaker, call for the Speaker's resignation, etc.
Okay. And in that debate you referred to, this is March 2nd, we're taping it, March 1st, that debate was Politico, sponsored by Politico, Institute of Politics at the University of Chicago, and WBEZ, right?
Correct.
Okay, so as people know. And it took place at the University of Chicago campus. My good friend David Axelrod, who runs the Institute of Politics, A shout out to David. David, remember, I gave you that. Okay. See the plugs we give? I never get rewarded for them. Okay. So it's the independence issue. So you're saying JB is attacked for being at the debate and otherwise by Biss and Kennedy for being not as independent of Mike Madigan, the famous Speaker of the House in Illinois, the most powerful politician in the state of Illinois, some would say in the country, they say you're not as independent as you should be of Mike Madigan, as we are, Biss and Kennedy.
Correct.
And what do they give as an example of their independence?
Well, again, both of them have called.
I just want to highlight it.
Yeah, so both of them had called for the Speaker to resign
As
chairman of the party. I believe, that's what I've heard. I don't know if they've gone further to ask for.
No, they have not gone further. I've asked them, and
I
no,
don't think so.
that's something else. People
Right.
should look at that
Right.
perhaps, but all they're saying now is step down as chair of the Illinois Democratic Party.
And people have attacked Biss because he ran a super PAC that was on behalf of the Speaker's candidates.
It's
in
kind of
the
unfair
past.
because I'm trying to be fair and balanced here. I'm not for Biss, I'm not for anybody, okay? I'm the only fair journalist other than Dennis in the crowd. Okay, we're the only two honest people around, but seriously, when Biss ran that, really what was he doing? Was he doing something at Mike Madigan's behest, or was he basically getting money from Madigan to do what he wanted to do? What was that super PAC about?
I think it was about supporting the agenda of the Democratic majority.
It was basically opposing Trump, wasn't it? Wasn't it more a national thing than a state thing, or am I wrong on that?
I don't know.
Okay,
That's a good
that was my impression. It was basically a hostile to Trump. They got a lot of money. I think Madigan was in sync with Biss on that, but I don't think you would really say that Biss was being controlled by Mike on that, right?
No, I just think
I'm not
that
saying you wouldn't, but I mean, that's
No,
what,
I just
that's
think
what JB says.
that's
yeah.
been the
Yeah.
pushback
Okay,
on
all right.
the credibility
Enough
issue.
on that. You see how easy it is to get in the weeds. I'm critical of other journalists for doing it, and I find myself doing it here.
So easy.
It's so
just
easy. Okay, so the main point is, we're taping this on March 2nd, the election is the 20th, you may be seeing it on the 19th. If you're a voter in the Democratic primary, you're saying, there's 6 candidates, but really, I don't mean to slight them, but the other 3 are not going to win, okay? So we got to prioritize. Someday we could give them a little more time than we have today. But it's going to be J.B. Pritzker, it's going to be Chris Kennedy, it's going to be Daniel Biss, and you're saying it's going to be J.B. Pritzker. And you're getting at the numbers, and you said there's not a lot of difference between them. There's this independence issue.
Independence issue. I think that there's a split on recreational marijuana. I think Kennedy's opposed to it. I think Biss and JB are for it.
Not going to be a decisive factor,
Exactly.
I don't think, here in Illinois.
Exactly. I think these are smaller
But there are
issues.
things like, okay, we've seen the ads. Biss says, I am a middle-class progressive, right?
Right.
He is like, I knew Daniel, he's been on the show, he used to do what you do. I ask you a question, you answer it. Not anymore. Daniel's now a polished politician. How many years he's been there? I don't know. Probably more than Obama was, which was 8, thereabouts. So now he says, I say, like, what's the weather like? And Daniel says, I am a middle-class progressive. Well, what do you think of Trump? I am a middle-class progressive.
You have to stay on message.
You have to.
You have to.
No, but here's the difference. I've talked to Chris Kennedy, and again, I don't support any of these people, but Chris is still of the mode, and he's not really a politician yet that much. He actually thinks about your question, and he answers it. I'm kind of impressed. If he wins, I'm not predicting he will, but if he does, I think people will have seen that. I think his handlers will have said, oh, we get it, Jeff. That's what we should be emphasizing in the last week or two. He listens to you, and he tries to think through, not you personally, but maybe you personally, but the 13 million people here or so in Illinois, the people who come up to him, and he says, this gun violence thing is not working well. We have to do something. And he is grappling with that. Yes, he's doing a little bit of the politician thing of pointing out that his father was assassinated by a gun. But can you blame him for really taking it? No, you can't. I mean, you can. Blaming a politician for being, and he's running for office, so he's a politician. Blaming a politician for being like a politician is a little bit like blaming dogs for barking. That is what they do, right?
Yeah, I mean, what I would say about Chris is he brings a passion to this that is impressive. Obviously, from his the legacy of his family and the family name. I think
Kennedy name.
the Kennedy name.
The JFK, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, President of the United States from 1960 to 63, the Civil Rights era, the man who with his brother RFK and Chris's father thought about and grappled with people and the terrible things that were going on in the South, in the Deep South, in 62, and the arrests that were going on of good people and the slaughter that is all somehow, and I don't know how this happens, because we're in 2018, we are, what is that? It's more than a half a century later. Dennis Gragert, is that still on people's minds? What I just said about JFK and RFK and the Kennedy name and civil rights and all of that? Because people say, I'm just going to ask you, is that still on people's minds?
Well, what they found when they were introducing Chris is that, particularly within the African American community, there was a remembrance of that and a respect for that relative to Chris. But what I've been most impressed with, just having spent some time seeing Chris in the campaign trail, is the passion that he brings to this, and it is fresh. It is fresh, and it is something that is unique. To your point, it's hard for people to kind of brave that path. That being said, I mean, there's also been things that he has probably not been as crisp as he needed to be on the campaign. If you recall when he kind of first came out.
Oh, but that's in the past. Yeah, that happens.
But I'm just saying,
Dennis, if you ran for office someday, I understand you might do that. But if you do, you'll encounter some of the same things.
Not after being on this show, I won't. That's for sure.
We'll run that tape. I'll blackmail this guy.
Not
I am
after
so
this
smart
show.
to have Dennis on this show. Okay, but seriously. Okay, but that was a while ago, and he's not doing that stuff so much. And really, there's a correlation here. It kind of leads into the discussion of the Republicans in this race. Donald Trump, because Trump in 2016 won because he sensed there was something out there. People didn't want the same old politician, the steel workers who'd been hurt in their mind by bad trade agreements, the other workers who'd been hurt. They connected with this guy who tells us he has a net worth of $8 billion. They connected with Donald Trump. As we tape this on March 1, we've had a terrible shooting just a few weeks ago. Trump has held a thing a few days ago in the White House with people talking about gun control, sounding like the most un-Trumpian person you could be, as he was saying. He was pointing at U.S. senators. He was pointing at the guy from Pennsylvania, who's a conservative Democrat, Joe Manchin, and the guy from Pennsylvania, so Manchin from West Virginia. And Toomey from Pennsylvania, and he said, you guys are really afraid of the NRA. Oh, bad guys. Donald Trump said that.
Right.
He said that's why they wouldn't put in this thing about the age thing, right? They wouldn't raise the age of buying AR-15s?
AR-15s, right.
From 20, you could buy them now at 18. They wanted 21. They said they didn't put that in the bill. Really, that was Trump.
Right.
So my point to you is maybe Chris Kennedy is tapping into some of the same thing. We'll see in Illinois, the same populist movement. We don't want a big spender like J.B. Pritzker, who's just towing the line with Mike Madigan. We don't want Daniel Biss, who's been a politician for 10 years. We want the freshness of Chris Kennedy. Is that what you're saying?
I think that's part of it. I think the difference is that Trump on the other side of Trump was Hillary Clinton, and Hillary had huge negatives in large parts of this country. And
a bad candidate, so Trump had the fortune of running against a bad candidate.
Right. And JB, I would say,
well, he's got those Chicago Tribune tapes.
He is an insider.
Excuse me, we just forgot. We were in the weeds. We forgot the Chicago Tribune tapes.
Right.
Will that be the death knell of J.B. Pritzker relative to Chris Kennedy, who's got no bad stuff like that?
No, I don't think so. I think JB, has dealt with that well.
Really?
I do. I think what the first rule is to get out in front of it, and I think he did that.
Okay, so that's behind him. And you say Gragert says
and
this.
my point-
If Dennis says this, it's going to happen.
My point
Pritzker
is
wins. He keeps telling me, Biaf, I'm telling you, Pritzker wins.
Like I
because
said,
he's dealt with the
the
Tribune
more I
tapes.
say it, the less likely it'll be. No,
Okay.
I'm kidding.
No, but seriously, so you're saying that's not a big deal anymore?
No, I'm not saying it's not a big deal. It's not enough. It's not enough to overcome the fact of the other part of his campaign, the $56 million that he spent.
I suppose, okay.
So that's
So that is a lead into Bruce Rauner, who similarly had, okay, JB's got net worth of $3.4 billion, makes Rauner look like a pauper because he's only got $1 billion, some would say 800 million in net worth.
Probably less than.
Yeah, so he's a pauper, but he spent big and won, 30 million of his own money, 30 million of his rich friends' money in 2014, blew everybody else away, and he didn't have such good candidates in the primary. He didn't have a good one to run against the general.
Another case, a very, a Governor Quinn who was just
Embattled, beleaguered.
Completely.
Okay,
that
so
point.
he won in 2014. He said, I'm going to spend less, I'm going to tax less, we're going to bring about reforms, we'll reform education. It'll be morning in America again. Really, morning in America. I guess he stole that from Ronald Reagan. He ran.
Did he say that?
No, but
Okay.
author's embellishment.
Yeah,
Okay?
fair enough. Fair enough.
But it was kind of like that. I was there. I watched these debates. He won every debate. They said his Republican peers in the primary said, oh, he's not debating enough. He didn't do 25. He did 5, and he won every one of them. Really? His peers, his competitors should have been thankful that he didn't do 25 because better they lost 5-0 than 25-0. Okay, but so he did well, and then he won by 5 points, fairly good margin over Pat Quinn. But he didn't have, the Senate had a veto-proof Democratic majority, but the House didn't, but they had a majority. So he had tough majorities in the House and the Senate to compete with of his popularity. And what happened, Dennis Gragert?
Well, he just couldn't advance his agenda at any front, and so he kind of got locked into this death march of no lack of budget for.
Yeah, he made a deal with Madigan. That was good for 2015. They got a fiscal year 2015 budget. They got it done quickly. Should have been an example. He went to 2016, 17. He said, what did he say, Dennis Gragert? What did Rauner say when he was looking Madigan in the eye?
Question.
No, it's not your. He said, what did Governor Rauner said to Madigan, look, I'll give you your budget. I'll give you more revenue. But I want what? What does he want?
Oh, there were business reform.
He wanted some reforms. He was almost begging, give me anything. Give me anything, Mike. Please, I'm on my knees. And Mike said, no. He took out his baseball cards that showed all the governors that had preceded Rauner. And Mike had been there, Democrat and Republican, and they all got beat. Right. And he said, you're going to become a baseball card that I beat, right? And he gave him no reforms, right?
Right. So if you go to look at now, so if you take, there's one of the interesting things is the difference between the two races. So in the Democratic side, as we've talked about, there are differences, but they're relatively small between the candidates.
Minuscule. You need a microscope of the kind that we used to go to Mars to find the differences.
On the Republican side, not so true. You couldn't find two candidates differently positioned relative to their party. Between Jeannie Ives and Governor Rauner.
So we talked a little bit about Bruce Rauner. Who is Jeannie Ives?
So Jeannie Ives is a member of the state legislature. She
is what? She's a state rep?
State rep.
For 3 terms. This is her 3rd term?
Yep, right.
This is her 5th year, 6th year?
DuPage County, Wheaton area.
Wheaton, yeah.
Very conservative.
Conservative socially, economically,
pretty
everything?
much all of the above.
She is like a straight, philosophical, conservative, economic, social.
I think you couldn't find a candidate with better conservative bona fides than Jeannie Ives.
What about her background?
Her background, she's West Point.
West Point?
Yeah.
You don't get much better than running from West Point.
I believe 2 sons that serve in the military.
How many kids total?
That's a trick question. I want to say 3. Is
5.
that right? 5. Oh,
5.
See, 5.
See, you've got 2 kids. So she is 2.5 times better in a sense than you, right?
I've
got 2 kids. She's 2.5 times better than
more
me.
than 2, but that's true.
Okay. She is like the perfect family. Wonderful husband. Right. They're in love. 1 marriage, no divorce. Right. 5 kids.
There's a lot of appeal.
Stay-at-home mom initially. West Point. Then she's a state rep. She's a consistent conservative. What's not to love, right?
For in a Republican primary, I think that's true. The challenge.
So she should win easily, right?
No, I think it goes back to now we're back to the money issue.
The money issue.
We're back to the money and name identification.
So Bruce has spent roughly how much so far? probably, what, 20 million already?
Something,
or-
and most of that's been attacking JB.
Okay, but some.
But
Because he thought he can ignore her because nobody knows her, right?
right, and
He's not debating her,
He's
except
not.
for one, which we'll get to.
right. They had one Tribune
But
debate.
other than that, no debates.
No, and he's attacking her.
But what is the problem with Rauner? Well, you said he couldn't get 2 budgets. What happened?
So the
Tell the
pro-
people, in case they were asleep the last few years, what happened in 2017?
Well, the budget was passed over his veto, and that included a tax increase. I mean,
How much?
tax increase, this is one of those trick questions which I show the answer. It was like 1.75, I believe, up.
Percent?
Yeah, percent.
Well, yes,
So
okay.
they
No,
were saying
actually,
a 30%
it
increase,
went,
30
the
something,
income tax
32.
had been at 3% in 2010.
Right.
Quinn raised it to 5% in 2011. It was set to go back, if nothing happened, to 3.75. And it did in
Right.
2015
Right.
when Rauner came in.
And
right?
now it's,
And they raised it from 3.75, they being the Democrats with the help of some Republicans. They raised it from 3.75 to 4.95, so Rauner could say it didn't go back up to 5, some would say. But the point is that that amount of money was $5 billion. Count them, billion with a B. 5 billion biggies, right? That's a lot of money. So Rauner vetoed that, right?
correct.
And what happened?
And then his veto was overridden
With the help of,
by 14 Republicans.
yeah,
Many
or
of whom,
10 to, because first there were 15, I think, that voted for it,
Right.
and then on the override, I think there were 10 on the override. But a bunch of them, and the question of the day is for you, Dennis Gragert, how much did Rauner really oppose that? Did he campaign? Did he take out ads? Did he say, oh, this is terrible? Those Republicans who voted for it, you made a big mistake. Don't you override, don't you override. Did he do all of that? Did he unmistakably take a position against that tax increase so nobody could say he hadn't
is
opposed
that
it?
a leading question?
Yeah, but you can do it. It's cross-examination. Everybody would know it.
I would say no.
Leading questions
I would
are
say
allowed
no.
on
The
cross.
answer to that is no. I mean,
He did not
He
what?
did not. He did not.
He didn't really oppose it
publicly-
vigorously.
Well, I don't. That's a hard measure. He didn't do what you said in terms of
He didn't give it 1,000%. Everybody knows that.
The challenge Rauner faces, as I've just described, is he's a man without a country. Like, he doesn't have, he's lost the Republican base. The Democrats, his polling numbers with Democrats are abysmal.
Well, across the state, it's 26%. It might be a little better with
So
Republicans, but no, it's-
so what I think you're looking at a scenario where, if I'm correct, that JB will win the primary because he's done.
We got it,
He's
okay.
won,
And
he's gonna
Rauner
face,
would-
and Rauner will beat. While Ives is, I believe, run a very strong campaign. It's just there's just not enough oxygen
Latest
there for
polling
her.
as of March 2nd shows her losing 51-31.
Right. So with ends up something like that. So you get with a Rauner.
But wait a
JB,
second. What, just tell the people, tell the good people,
Tell the good people.
what is it Rauner saying about Jeannie Ives now that he's paying attention to her?
Well, he's criticizing her for being connected to Madigan, which is kind of his standard line. He doesn't seem to have
And
it.
is there any truth to that?
It is. It's knowing. Knowing about
Yes
Jeannie's
or
record.
no, sir?
It's hard. It's
Direct
hard.
the witness to answer the
It's
question.
hard to, I would say, attack her for that. That being said, he's done it, and
It's
he,
hard,
and he picked out. I mean,
No, go a little further, Dennis. You're
No,
taking
he
some
picked
truth
that- I
serum.
mean,
Is there any truth to the argument that Mike Madigan and Jeannie Ives are close, that Jeannie Ives favors Mike Madigan? Is
No.
there any truth?
no, there isn't.
I couldn't hear that.
No, there isn't. But
Okay.
but the problem for Jeannie is, as she was trying to explain that in the Tribune editorial debate, she gave some quotes that made good television fodder, and so.
But in reality, you know, I know, Rauner knows, anybody who follows this knows, that is one big lie. Because you can lie in politics, and we all allow a little bit of it, white lies, as my good friends Ms. Hicks said, white lie. But this is not a white lie, this is a big lie, right?
Again, I think that's a leading question. I think that's what we call
Come on,
it.
answer the question.
I mean, we're now with Hope Hicks and white lies and white lies. I think that he politically what I would say about it is he had nothing, if I'm playing his cards, he had nothing else to attack her on, and so this was the only path for
But
him.
is there any truth to that argument?
Well, he quoted her truthfully.
No. Is there any truth to the essence of the argument that Madigan and Ives are close, that Ives likes Madigan. Is there any truth to that?
I would say no.
Absolutely. And the second argument he made was what?
Is that the right answer? No? No.
Yes, there's no truth to it. So what is the next argument that Rauner made about Ives was what?
Let's see.
She favors tax increases. She favors keeping taxes where they are at the rate of 4.95%. And here's, folks, what she said was, in this debate, I believe, you call it that, the turbo, we're not going to be able to change that. He couldn't stop it, and now you would have to go back and get a repeal. You're not going to get Republicans and Democrats to vote for that. She didn't say, I favor that. That is the reality, and now we have to figure out what to do. And he converted that into saying she wants higher taxes and to keep taxes high. That is lie number two. Look, I like Bruce, but you have to. If you want to be a journalist in Chicago, of which there are only two, Gragert and Berkowitz. I like that name, okay? You have to tell the truth. And telling the truth here is that Rauner told two big lies, and that was the second one, right?
First, I would say I'm not a journalist, so that's where
Okay.
we're on the
Well, but just answer the question.
Well-
Is that a lie to say Jeannie really wants to keep taxes high and to make them higher?
No, I think, but what I
Or is
what I
it a
see-
lie? Is it a lie to say that?
Is it a lie to say Jeannie wants to?
Keep taxes where they are or make them even higher?
I don't know. I don't.
Really? Okay.
No, I'm saying.
Yeah,
I mean,
know
and the reason.
Jeannie, if you've talked to Jeannie Ives, she sat here 4 years ago. She supported Rauner because she doesn't want higher taxes.
No, she doesn't.
She sat where you're sitting
But
4
she's
years
being-
ago and supported Rauner.
But here's
Okay.
what she's doing, and I think but here's what she is speaking to this in a nuanced way and trying to kind of work her way through it, which I appreciate because she's trying to bring
Nuanced?
some reality to it, to the discussion.
Okay, yeah, okay.
But it's left her open to criticism. That is the challenge, and that's not I don't think that's a lie versus truth
She
scenario.
should have been a little less nuanced before the Chicago Tribune board. She wouldn't have had these things he could really deceptively snake out. She gave him an opening, he took it.
Exactly.
That's your point?
That is my point. That is
So
my
in
point.
closing, Dennis Gragert, what is it you do?
I am a political consultant, and I also publish the Daily Whale, which is a news service for people that work in and around government.
And when does that come out?
It's a twice daily newsletter, and
Comes out in the morning, in the afternoon,
morning,
Monday
afternoon,
through Friday?
morning, afternoon.
They can find it. We can't give that because it's commercial, so we're prohibited from giving you the website. But as you watch this, you can go to chicagonow.com/public affairs, my blog. I'll be promoting the show. I'll be linking to Dennis's website. Should you want to subscribe to this thing, we can't say you should, then you'll find all the information to get in touch with Dennis and do that. Should you want to find out about his research consulting that his firm does, his other firm, you can find out that. In short, he knows a lot of stuff, seriously. It's been like pulling teeth to get him to agree with me on a few things.
See
But
that?
basically, you do agree with me. Would you say basically?
Yes, I do basically agree
There
with you.
you
See,
go.
another leading
There you
question.
go.
See,
Leading questions
I
are
need to
okay
be a
on
be-
cross.
I need to be.
I
a
went to
better-
law school.
I need to be a
okay?
better. I have
Okay.
to work on my political responses.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you got the sense of the primaries and who's running and what your choices are. And I hope you just remember one thing. You come back next week and every week to public affairs, not for me, not Berkowitz, nothing, but to see people like Dennis Gragert who have wisdom. All right, see you next week, public affairs.